Okay, before I jump into the presentation, I do want to just make a quick introduction. So my name is Jonathan Lightfoot. I work with the City of San Clemente as the Economic Development Officer. I've been with the city for a few years. I've also worked in community development with planning. And then you'll also see probably towards the top of your screen, since she was one of the early joiners, Teresa Dobbs. Teresa has also worked at the city for a while and is familiar with the Community Development Block Grant program run by the federal government. She's worked with the city in a consulting capacity for a few years. But Teresa, if you wouldn't mind just doing a little bit more of an introduction for yourself, and then we'll get started with the presentation.
Sure. I've been with the city for about 4 years now. I work largely with the housing rehabilitation program using community development block grant funds. But I've been working with CDBG for probably almost 30 years. So I'm familiar with their requirements and working with people. So I'm looking forward to hopefully helping a lot of you out today.
Great. Thank you so much. I have one last person I'm letting in, and then I'm going to get started. So my first step is going to be sharing my screen. So bear with me, I'm gonna get that going. And what you should see is the first page of a PowerPoint presentation. I'm gonna launch that now. And if I could get a couple people just to nod that you are seeing that presentation on the screen. Fantastic, okay. The City of San Clemente is launching a small business grant program. These funds come out of federal funds that come to the city through something called the Community Development Block Grant. So that's the CDBG abbreviation that you'll see here. The most recent round of funding was discussed by council recently, and they decided to allocate the majority of those funds towards the small business grant program. So these federal funds are intended to benefit low or moderate income individuals and can be used for economic development, which is why we're able to put this in a position to support local businesses. City Council allocated about $250,000 to this small business grant program that is for San Clemente specifically. These grants will assist small businesses with expenses such as PPE, rent, utilities, or other expenses that are directly related to COVID or responding from that. The grant is going to be available in 2 tiers. One of the primary group will be the small business grant of $10,000 or up to $10,000 per eligible business. And that's going to cover businesses between 6 and 25 full-time equivalent employees. I have another slide following this that'll explain that breakdown of what entails a full-time equivalent employee. And continue to bear with me. I have people continue to join, so I'm going to let people in as we go. Here we go. The other tier is for micro businesses, which are defined by the federal government as businesses with 5 or fewer full-time employees. And so we'll have a grant of up to $7,500 available for those businesses. The minimum grant award is going to be for $3,000. So within your application, you're going to need to demonstrate that you have a need that's equivalent to at least that value. Explaining the full-time employee equivalency. Full-time employees that work at least 40 hours a week obviously count as a full-time employee. Part-time employees are calculated by taking the hours worked by all part-time employees and dividing that amount by 40. So if you have 2 part-time employees on your staff that work about 20 hours each, those are going to equate to 1 full-time employee. So when you're preparing your application and supporting documentation, you'll show through your listing of employees that the total hours worked by the staffing is equivalent to 25 full-time employees. If you have specific questions on that, you can find additional information on the IRS's website regarding that FTE calculation. So the grant can be used for a variety of things. We wanted to keep this flexible as we can, but recognizing too that there are some federal guidelines or restrictions for what the funds can be used for. So this list here goes through some of those. We expect that the probably the most likely requests are for assistance with payroll and employee retention, and for rent or utilities uses. But there's a variety of other eligible uses that are listed here. And we did include an other category that you'll see on the application as well. And so we're willing to look at other expenses that you may have incurred as a business that are not specifically in this list, and consider those. Please note, though, that the federal government does prohibit us from providing reimbursement for any kind of reusable equipment. So if you purchased, for instance, an iPad to better assist mobile customers or orders or something of that nature, that iPad can continue to be used outside of this event, and so that would not be an eligible expense. So anything that is a reusable thing of that nature would not be eligible. This is a breakdown of the overall grant timeline. So we're starting here in the blue block. Today is January 11th. We have the webinar happening right now, and then we'll be moving tomorrow into the application window. And that will run until January 24th, which is a Sunday. And so the application period will be open until midnight on that Sunday, the 24th. The next work week, January 25th through the 31st, will be when staff is reviewing the applications that have come in for completeness and assist with any documentation. So what that means is that we'll go through, there's a list you'll see when Teresa reviews the application of required supplemental forms to be submitted. And if there's any issues with the forms that were submitted, we'll reach out and assist the businesses in getting the accurate information completed for that. And then finally, we envision reviewing the final applications that meet the criteria in the February 1st to 4th window, and announcing the grant awards on February 4th. And that should coincide with about the timeline for when the city is receiving those federal funds. This slide is obviously small text, but what I wanted to share as well is that I've already uploaded this presentation, so you'll be able to go look through each of these items in more detail on our website, and I'll provide that information shortly. But briefly, just to go through some of the pieces that are required for eligibility for this program. You do have to be a business that's located within the city of San Clemente with an active business license that's been active for at least the prior 6 months. The business must have been affected by COVID-19 and be able to show documentation to verify that. As we've already mentioned, there's some full-time employee equivalency standards. And another requirement of the CDBG funding is the business must create or retain one low or moderate full-time employee for a minimum of 2 months. So that's saying that these funds are going to be assisting you in maintaining or bringing back an employee that may have been affected by that. There's a couple of links here as well. So the first is that you must provide a safe reopening plan, and there's guidance on how to do that from this first link. The second is that the business needs to obtain a DUNS number. Many of you probably already have that, and there's a link provided here as well to assist in that if you don't. And finally, as part of just one of the things that we'll be taking into consideration potentially is whether you've been able to secure alternative sources of funding. And I want to clarify that that would not make you ineligible if you have received funds from other sources, but there is a grant committee, and that may be something that is taken into account if we receive more eligible applications than we are able to award for grants. So that's going to be something that we request some information as well on the application. And then the business must be in good standing and not have any open code compliance issues with the city. Again, it's not going to be something that invalidates or makes your application ineligible if there is something with code compliance, but we will reach out to that department and make sure that you're on track to resolve any of those issues before your application can move forward. So again, these funds are coming from federal sources from HUD through the CDBG program. And you may have heard me mention earlier that there was a requirement regarding low or moderate income households. And that's going to be something that many of the businesses most impacted by COVID will be able to validate. So if you have, for instance, a restaurant, many of your employers are going to fall below the hourly wage criteria. The calculation for that actually puts, or the standard is 80% of the Orange County median income. And so if you have an employee that's making essentially less than $72,000, the exact figure, $71,750, they would fall into this criteria. I'm gonna defer to Teresa if there are questions on this section, but we'll have her go into a little bit more depth later on this one. Unless, Teresa, is there anything you want to add at this point?
The only thing I would say is that that income threshold of $71,750 isn't for the entire household, it's for that individual employee.
Fantastic. So again, there's going to be an employee certification form that will touch on that, and if you can validate that the employee is at or below that threshold, then there would be eligibility there. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is the link here for the application. I'm actually going to pause our PowerPoint presentation. So you'll see a little bit of a change on my screen here. You click on that link, it's going to pull up our web page here. So you'll see from the city's website, there's a small business COVID relief grant page that's just launched. And as I mentioned, the application period starts tomorrow. So there's a few things that we are finalizing for documentation on this page, but you will already be able to click on the apply here link by the end of the day to access that application form. And once you click on that, I'm going to jump here. This is going to be the PDF that you see. And I'm going to transition now to Teresa to have her talk through this application form.
Thanks. So this is it's a 3-page application form. We tried to keep it as simple as possible, but just know that with HUD, there's certain requirements that they have that we have to put in there. And some of the information on this, Jonathan's already gone over. So the first section is pretty self-explanatory: the name of the business owner or the applicant. So whoever we're going to be in contact with regarding this grant, that name needs to be there. The date they opened in San Clemente, what their business license number is, the type of business, whether it's restaurant, fitness, salon, whatever that is, the actual business address, and the applicant phone number. Jonathan, can you scroll down? There we go. The next one is the number of full-time employees, or FTE, as Jonathan talked about it, pre-COVID-19. So that would be all your full-time employees and part-time employees that add up to 1 full-time employee. And if it comes out to, 35.5 or 22.6, just round up or round down. We don't need to see the 0.5 number when you're figuring that out. And same thing with the current number of full-time employees or FTE. For those that are a micro business, is the applicant owner considered one of the employees? So are they taking a salary? The next part is the business general information. What kind of business is it? Is it an LLC, partnership, sole proprietor, corporation, whatever that is? Please explain what that is. And then, does your business have any outstanding code violations or unresolved municipal code violations and or fees due to the city? If so, please explain. If you're undergoing a case with them right now, just let us know where you're at with that. The key point again is business sales down 15% or more from the previous year, 2019 versus 2020. Has the business had to use reserves to continue operating? That's a yes or no question. And then what Jonathan touched on too, as far as have you been awarded or applied for any COVID-19 pandemic relief funds from any agencies? So we'll need you to list those out. If you've applied for them, we know the state grant just came out last week. So if you're applying for that, please include that on there as well. If you've received assistance for like payroll assistance, that was in the past, just make sure you put the time period on there, because we can pay for payroll assistance, but not if you've already been reimbursed by the state or another organization. So Please make sure you have times for things like payroll or rent assistance that you've been assisted with. Jonathan, can you scroll down a little bit? The DUNS number that we've talked about already, you need to have that. Safe reopening plan. The next section is the business impact statement, which is very important actually. Write out all the adverse effects that you've had on your business, the modifications you've had to make, what the days you've had to close, and then make more modifications and then close again. Any other impacts that it's had on your business financially. And if you need to attach additional pages, feel free to do that. But HUD really wants to see, why are you needing this money? What has happened to your business? So the more you can explain on that, the better. And in the next section where we talk about documents, whatever documents you have to document what the adverse effects you've been through is very important. So the documents that are attached to this application, we need your 2019 tax return and profit and loss statement. If you have filed for an extension for your 2019 and haven't done it yet, I suggest you get that done if you want to apply for this grant. We need a 2020 preliminary profit and loss statement. And then again, the documentation supporting the economic impact. So what you put in your business impact statement, any documentation you can provide with that is very helpful. The next is the employee information and certification form. Jonathan, do you want to go to that now, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. So this is for the position that you are either the full-time equivalent position that you are creating or retaining. So the employee's name, what their position is, and whether you are creating or retaining that position. Were they unemployed due to COVID-19 prior to this grant assistance? Were they full-time or part-time, their hours per week, and their current hourly rate? And then we have the ethnicity information that's required as well. There's spaces for 3 employees on there. If you have 4 employees that are all working 10 hours a week that you are creating or retaining that position, just feel free to attach another page to that. Okay, so if you want to go back to the application, to documents, is there anything else on that page? Up a little more. A little more. So the other thing we'll need for the employee information and certification form is we do need your payroll register. If you file 941s for the quarters, we will need those for 2019 and 20 if you are requesting assistance for payroll assistance. Again, if you're requesting reimbursement for PPE or you have a proposal for PPE, we need to see that invoice or canceled checks. If you are requesting help with utility statements, then we will need to see copies of your past utility statements. Same thing with your rent. If you want assistance with your rent, we do need to see a copy of your lease agreement and proof of payment. The next section is the proposed use of funds so that we know exactly what you want to be reimbursed for, whether it's PPE, the utilities, rent, payroll, rental of temporary outdoor amenities, or other items that would go there. We know it may not exactly be 10,000. It can be a little bit over, but don't put something like have it add up to $30,000 because that's not going to help us. We need to know what you want to do with that $10,000 that we are going to assist you with. And then the very last statement is the business certification and acknowledgement that the information you provided is accurate. You agree to commit to employ that newly retained employee for a minimum of 2 months after you receive the funding, and that you declare all this under penalty of perjury. So that's the basic application that we're requesting. There's also a W-9 that would be attached just if you receive funding that we will have you sign. So that's the basic application.
Okay, I'm going to go back to our presentation and resume that. As I mentioned, this will be available, the presentation on our website. So everyone who's registered, I'll send out a direct link to the website where you'll be able to find that. So once you finish that application and gather your relevant supporting documents, you have 2 options for submittal of those. So Again, the application period is between January 12th and 24th, and you can submit your application by email to econdev@san-clemente.org. Please note that our server has a requirement or a screening for any emails that are larger than 10 megabytes. So you would either need to compress your documents or separate them if you're going above that threshold. If you'd prefer to submit an alternate way, you can mail your application into the city by using either a USB flash drive, or you can submit hard copies as well to the city's offices here in San Clemente with the addresses shown here. We do ask that those be postmarked by January 22nd so that they can be received at the city during the following week when we're doing the review of applications. Grant awards. The grant committee will review applications between February 1st and 4th, and the target award announcement is February 4th, 2021. I have two ifs here. If there are not enough funds to award all eligible applicants, the committee will prioritize those demonstrating the greater revenue impact from COVID. If there are remaining funds, so if we don't use all the funds in this first round of funding, the committee will consider a second round of grants that could potentially open up the eligibility. I did see one question in the chat regarding nonprofit eligibility, and in the first round, the focus of this grant program is going to be on small businesses, so nonprofits are not eligible in the first round, but that is one area that could be considered for a second round, and so we'll be making an announcement if we do have a second round that advances. And there's other things that could be considered as well, such as looking at the full-time employee equivalency, etc. So if you come across something that you think makes you ineligible, then please feel free to contact us, again, using that econdev@san-clemente.org email address. Let us know why there's something that may be making you ineligible, and we'll look at that and consider our options for expanding to capture more businesses in that second round if we have remaining funds. Questions, we'll get into this now, but again, here's that email address for anything that you think of after the fact. And I am I combined the planning and publishing. I'm planning on publishing an FAQ on the web page that was shown earlier for this grant program. So I'll compile any questions from today's webinar, as well as anything that I received by email, and make that available to the public in that way. I'm gonna end the screen share temporarily and see if we have any questions to jump into. Teresa, are there any in the chat box that we haven't hit on yet?
Yes, someone asked if the business owners who are the sole employee, are they eligible? As long as they are low income, we can look at that as well. Depends on what kind of corporation they are. Just understand that this program is not only new to you, but it's also new to us. So we are getting guidance from HUD as we go. But at this point, yes, you should be eligible for that.
I would comment as well that while sole proprietorships may be eligible, we do still have the standard that they have a business license. And in this first round of funding, home occupancy permits, or home occs as they're known here in the city, those are not currently eligible in the round one of funding. I'm gonna jump into the chat and see if there's any other questions so far. I do see a question: if we opened in January of 2020, will we be eligible? And this isn't a good example of a question that, Vikram, I'm gonna respond to you after the fact if I can follow up with you. The intent was to support anyone who has had an active business license for at least the past 6 months. But that does present a challenge, obviously, in showing the comparative between 2019 and 2020. So I'm going to respond to you after Teresa and I are able to pose that question to HUD and see if there's a way that we can work that out so that you would be eligible. But I'll respond to you directly. If you could send me an email, again, to econdev@san-clemente.org. I'll make sure that we follow up with you directly. I don't see that I have any other questions currently in the group chat. We'll give a second if anyone wants to add any final questions in there before I move into some additional funding information.
I have a question. Is this
Okay.
first come, first serve?
No, very good question. Thank you, Josie. This program is not first come, first serve, so don't feel like you need to be up and clicking on the link at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll be taking applications for that entire period. And then after the 24th, again, we're going to reach out to anyone that has incomplete applications and work with them to make sure that we get everything that's needed. And then ideally, we are able to award all eligible applicants a grant. If there's a shortage, then that's where the committee comes into play, and we would prioritize again the businesses who have been able to show that they've been most impacted financially.
Okay, I got one more question, and I may have missed it. The retention of an employee for 2 months, does that mean we have to hire a new employee and retain them, or what does that mean?
I'm going to let Teresa respond to that one. Teresa, could you respond to that?
Sure. It means you either have to create or retain a position. So maybe it's someone you laid off or you're going to be laying off because you don't have the funds for. But with this money, you would be able to keep them for an additional 60 days.
And Teresa, I believe that this is something.
So that's not clear. Does that include existing employees?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, so my understanding, Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to be a pretty easy standard for most people to meet that are in a sector such as personal service or salon or restaurant, because all of those businesses had to close temporarily or alter their operations temporarily. And so you had, at least for a period of time, even if they were your employees before and they came right back, those employees that had a disruption in their time of employment at your business would all be eligible. Is that correct, Teresa?
That is correct, that you are retaining them. You can also create a new position if you want, but I would think the majority would be going towards retaining employees that you've had in the past.
Correct. I do see another question regarding micro businesses. If we could confirm that 15% revenue decline between 2019 and 2020. That's actually not a HUD standard in this instance. That's what we have established as the threshold for the city. So that is something that we can evaluate, but the base criteria for us at the city right now is you have to show at least a 15% revenue decline. And that's, again, to help prioritize businesses who have been most impacted first. And then I see a request to put the link page back up. So let me switch over there. And I will also drop into the comments right now this direct link. And please note that, again, there's going to be some updates happening to this page for the remainder of the day. And so tomorrow morning is when the full list of document links, etc., will be available on that page. But this is what I just dropped into the chat box. That will be the domain that you go to starting tomorrow to begin your application.
And let me just say one more thing. The income threshold for HUD for 2020 for a single person household is $71,750. They can change that at any time. I'm sorry, that was a 2020 standard. So they may change the 2021 standard at any time, and that can go up or down. So that's another thing we'll be watching for. So today it's $71,750, but tomorrow it could be a different figure.
Correct. I would say that we're not expecting that to happen. What I saw from the last figure that was published in July of 2020. So I think that most likely we'll have our program wrapped up before that occurs. If it does, though, then that's one of the things that we would have to flexibly reach back out to you and update documentation to meet whatever the new HUD federal standard is there.
And that would only be if someone's really close to that figure. I would imagine most of these employees are probably going to be under that where it's not going to be an issue. I just in case, be aware.
Thank you, Teresa.
Hi, Jonathan. It's Yolanda. How are you?
Hi, Yolanda. I'm good. How are you today?
I do have a question. Is the DUNS number given right away? Because it says we need to have it, and I don't know if I have one. I'm going to go and apply. Do we have to wait until we receive that before we can complete the application?
I think you usually get a number within 24 hours.
Okay.
I could answer that. I got it within 2 hours.
Oh,
There you go.
awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Josie and Yolanda. Okay, so I have another question that just came in from Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. How much does the narrative play a part in the discussions? I'm asking because I was a brand new business mid-2019 that operated at a loss, but it looks like I made more in 2020. So the narrative is important because that, I think, helps us put context to everything. Obviously, none of your businesses operate in a vacuum. And so I think that that's is going to be something that weighs with us at the local level, being the committee. And then, Teresa, from what I understand in your discussions with HUD and with other consultants that work in this sphere, is that they actually do put some significant weight on the narrative portion. Do you want to comment any more on that?
Right. We would look at what date did you open in 2019 and look at, the monthly income that you made. And it's hard because a new business usually starts off a little bit slower, but that's why that narrative is important to see. But especially include the date the business started in 2019. That would be most important.
Thank you, Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to rotate into a couple more slides, and then while I'm doing that, if any other questions come in, of course, we'll circle back to those and respond to those before we finish today. But I did want to highlight that there are some other funding opportunities that are here as well. So I think that January and February are going to be a very critical time for our local businesses to tap into those. Many of you are aware that the state has been running a program, and that actually wraps up this Wednesday. So I'm launching my screen share again. Hopefully you're able to see that. I'm going to restart my PowerPoint from where we had left off and go to my final couple of slides here. So additional funding opportunities. The first and maybe most important that's on our horizon right now is the California Small Business COVID-19 Relief Grant Program. The grants range from $5,000 to $25,000, and the application period closes in 2 days. So if you have not yet applied, please make this a priority in the next couple of days. The link for the application is shown right there, careliefgrant.com. And if you would like, there's going to be webinars the next couple of days hosted by the SBDC, alphabet soup, pardon me. SBDC is the Small Business Development Center, and that link there, the fullerton.zoom.us, they'll be discussing that state grant program. If you want an introduction into that or have questions about it, it'll operate in a similar format to this where you can drop questions in to the moderator from the SBDC. Again, that program is wrapping up their first round of funding Wednesday night. So you need to have your application in before midnight on Wednesday to be eligible for that program. There's another one that was just announced recently for our county. The Orange County supervisors have allocated $10 million for a grant program. There's 5 districts in our county, and our supervisor for the Southern County area is Lisa Bartlett. And so each district was awarded $2 million. So there'll be another grant program, details to be announced. But what I have heard is that that program should be coming this month as well, in January. So keep your eyes open for that. And of course, we'll share information from the city and then with our partners at the Chamber and Downtown Business Group for that grant once it's announced. And then finally, I'm sure you've heard from the news that there was a new round of federal programs approved. And again, the SBDC is hosting some webinars to explain and talk through those different options for financial assistance. So there's a link here, and once again, I'm going to post this on our website so that you can click directly into that. And I have a following page that just explains this a little bit more. So they'll talk through the different grants, loans, and other assistance options for small businesses. And they'll touch on programs such as PPP, EIDL, the California Rebuilding Loan Fund, so a variety of those. So if any of those programs are of interest to you, the SBDC's Ask SBDC webinars are a great venue to learn more and ask questions about those programs. So I just want to wrap up and say thank you for joining us today. This webinar will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel under the PSAs and city videos playlist. And this link will go directly to that. Again, we appreciate you joining today. And before we leave though, I do want to take one more chance to see if there's any final questions. I see that in the chat link, Arlen from the San Clemente Chamber of Commerce has dropped in the page where they're tracking all of the active loans and credit programs and grants. So that's another good resource to take a look at. And as of now, I'm not seeing any final questions. So we're going to conclude, but I will say one more time that on the page that is up, we'll be including an FAQ. So if there are any questions that you think of after the fact, please send those to econdev@san-clemente.org. I'll drop that in the chat one last time for everyone. Send your questions to that email address, and we'll make sure to compile those and with responses in an FAQ on that site. And please come back tomorrow and begin that application process. And don't hesitate to reach out to myself, and I'll be coordinating with Teresa on any questions and making sure that we're available to assist you as you go through this process. And I do see that we have a couple of council members on, so I just wanted to say thank you as well to council and recognize their efforts in rolling these funds into a program where we could directly assist our local business community. So thanks to our council for that. With that, I just want to say thank you all for joining. Thank you, Teresa, for your assistance. And we look forward to working with you on this grant program. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.